Today, the first South Asian writer on SNL and his special Instant Karma is out next week. I have with me comedian Nimesh Patel.
It's Lil Baby.
SNL's SNL. It's like the best show of all time.
You still feel that way about SNL today?
And the lady looks at me and is just like, this is an annual meetup of parents with deceased children. I've never worked at a liquor store. My parents were like, you're not working in this neighborhood. You're going to get shot. People can just say whatever. And they're like, oh, it's comedy. And then it's just like, no, sometimes things are just racist. It's not worth hurting people with the joke that I was doing. I remember leaving that dinner and the PM, Ron, looking at me like,
welcome to episode 71 of Conversations with Chai. I'm your host, Ram Shodhi, aka Lil Baby Ram. And today, he was the first South Asian writer on SNL, and his special Instant Karma is out next week. I have with me comedian Nimesh Patel.
Hi, thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely, bro. Thank you for doing this. My first question, I kind of wanted to start with like when I first remember following you, and it was around obviously like the Columbia incident, right? When
they're having a moment.
Yeah.
Columbia University is having a moment.
When they basically you were asked to speak at Columbia and they took you off stage, right? And I definitely want to get into like how that shaped your approach to comedy. You think comedy is now back?
Comedy never went away. Anyone that says cancel culture is a real thing is just doing it for the grift of it. It's just made out to be this thing like you can't say whatever you want. I've maintained this since it happened in 2018. Comedy being back, so to speak, I think it's probably gotten too far that like now people can just say whatever and they're like, oh, it's comedy. And then it's just like, no, sometimes things are just racist. You know, sometimes it's not necessarily comedy. Like Hinchcliffe is a perfect example of just like, yeah, it was a joke. The Puerto Rican pile of garbage kind of thing. Like, but it's also just like not necessarily a good joke. But if you say like, oh, it's cancel culture, people are too easily offended. It's just a way to hide behind that as opposed to working on the craft of the joke. I'm sure there could have been a joke about Puerto Rico or Puerto Ricans that would have been very well received in that environment. And I'm just using that as the most recent example of quote unquote cancel culture or whatever. But in comedy, I don't think it's ever been a thing. I think real cancel culture is when I got kicked off stage at Columbia, it was around the same time Jamal Khashoggi had been murdered. Mm-hmm. That's cancel culture. The Mahmoud Khalil, the doctor that just self-deported to Canada, a hand transplant surgeon who was on an H-1B who just got deported. Like that's actual cancel culture in the sense like they are being prosecuted for things that they have said or have said, and they're being prosecuted by the government and by institutions that are supposed to have their back. Shout out to Columbia University for being spineless. As an institution, like that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. That's cancel culture. It's never impacted comedy. Anyone that has said that it impacted comedy is just doing it like, oh, look, I can say whatever I want, and people get mad if I don't. If I do, like that's bullshit. It's write a good joke and you'll be fine.
Did you feel did the Columbia incident that you were involved in, did that have an impact or any ramifications on you?
I have a Netflix special coming out April 1st. Life is good. I'm mentally, yeah, for sure. Like it was a stressful time because, you know, I was getting bombarded with messages and like I was trending on Yahoo. And like, if anything, it was embarrassing to have like a bad set be an introduction to a large part of the world. Like if you watch that set, like, cause I put the whole set up, so that you could see that I was in the right in my opinion, and factually, but like it was more so embarrassing than it was anything else to be like, oh, that's what I got to be known for the next like whatever time. And it was right after I'd been let go from SNL. In the context of where I was at in my comedy career, it felt like, what's going to happen to me? Because like I had nothing else. You know, I had no writing jobs lined up. I had maybe like 2 or 3 college gigs after that lined up, which were in jeopardy, and one of them fell off. And so in that context of like what the F is what's gonna happen to me, my career, like it was a bit scary, but I never adjusted my jokes or anything like that. If anything, like the few colleges that did book me after that were like, tell the joke. Like, you know, like they were like, be about it, you know? And I was like, yeah, I guess I kind of am about it. And if I don't stand by the joke now in the sense that it's like hacky and old, but from the perspective of like having the right to tell it and from the perspective of like, is it worth canceling? No, it's just it's a harmless thing. And it only emboldened my approach to what I was doing. You know, seeing how many people were just like, no, you were right. And like on my side, so to speak, about the whole thing just made me be like, yeah, and I always felt that I was right. I never felt I'd done anything wrong about anything I'd said. And I don't, for the most part. There's a few jokes that I've told that I've removed from my set and over the years, but that's because like I felt, oh, maybe I stepped over a line I shouldn't have stepped over, or offended people that shouldn't have, or had a lack of perspective when I told the joke, you know?
Do you have that internal mental line of like, yo, this is like, because again, like part of comedy is like, it's going to be offensive to somebody listening.
What's
right?
your background?
Like in terms of?
What's your ethnicity?
Bengali.
You're Bengali, okay. Practicing Muslim?
Yes.
When I was in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 2023, right after the October 7th attacks happened in the Middle East, in Israel, I was doing a joke, and I won't repeat the joke, but I was doing a joke that I thought was very funny and that people thought were very funny, and that people who are on the right side of history in the Israel-Palestine conflict, you know, in the long form of it, like the Palestinian side of it, were like, no, that's a funny joke. But when I told it in Ann Arbor, which is a huge Muslim population, and a huge, I guess, like Middle Eastern population as well, like not just Bengali Muslims, but like Arabic Muslim people from that region of the world, there was people that were very upset with me. And in the moment, I was obviously defensive. And I still stand by the joke. I just won't tell it again because the way it was contextualized was that, you know, I was playing into a game of the colonizer, like making the colonized seem like savages, justifying the retaliation that Israel was perpetrating upon the Palestinian people. And in that context, I was like, you know, I never really thought about it like that because it's never been my world to think about that. I'm just thinking about the joke and like how what I can make funny about it and take something super dark and bring a little darkness to it, but in the sense of making it funny. Mm-hmm. And I never really thought about it until I was told off by a woman who like interrupted the show and had to be removed. And she waited with her and her boyfriend after the show to like tell me off even further. And I was not in a state of mind to like entertain that. Those kind of things change my perspective. And it makes like, but like internally, I'm just like, this is funny, and I trust what I think is funny. I still think the joke is funny. I just know that it's not worth hurting people with the joke that I was doing. And if it hurts people in a way that I understand why they're not comfortable with, then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I won't do it.
But based off of even like our very short conversation now, right? Like, you don't think as like a comedian you should be offered your background and what you stand for as context for any joke that you may be telling? Like the same joke that's coming from you, I may not take the same way as Andrew Schultz making that same exact joke, right? Yeah. But from what you stand on, right? You telling that joke, I may say like, yo, you know what? Like coming from Nimesh, that's fine. Coming from Andrew, that might not be fine.
I understand what you're asking in the sense, and I would love grace from the crowd on everything that I say, in the sense of like, sometimes I'll say, like in my special, there's a few very dark jokes right in the middle that you can't, if you watch me and you're like, I don't know this guy at all and I don't know what comedy is, fuck this guy. That's what you would think. Mm-hmm. But I would love the grace from an audience to be like, you know what? This is comedy. He is obviously joking. There's no way what he's saying like that is actually how he feels about it. It's just for the bit. And I think what has happened, and I'm not a comedy historian by any means, but I think what has happened is that because comedy is so accessible and because people develop parasocial relationships over podcasts and whatever, like people forget that the person on stage is a clown. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, in that this is you are seeing this person, you should be seeing this person in a vacuum. The only thing you should know is that this person is a comedian, and you should instinctually gut check everything before you're like, oh, F this guy, he made a joke about, molesting kids or whatever it is. Like, we F this, it's clearly joking.
Yeah.
I would love that grace from a lot of audiences, and a lot of audiences give you that grace. Like I've been fortunate enough to develop a fan base that is smart enough to know when I'm messing around and when there's some nugget of truth behind what I'm saying. But I love that grace all the time. I wish I had that grace at Columbia, or at least a listening audience at Columbia, because they would have heard the nugget of truth behind what I was saying, the joke itself being a very progressive joke.
You think the nugget of truth is actually what kind of kills you? Because I think about like a Jesselnick, right? Who it's like so dark that you can clearly tell that it's all just comedy, right? Like nobody is actually thinking like, yo, he's throwing a brick through a window to hit a baby.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there is some nuance required to be a good audience member. Like you have to know you have to like have an internal thing that says like, oh, this is a joke versus this is like actually reality. So I mean, I don't know, it doesn't kill you. I think it makes it a bit stronger if you understand, if you feel that nuance, I have a joke in the special about going into an elevator, and I'll just do the premise. And the premise, and this 100% happened. I walked into an elevator, there's people wearing conference lanyards. I'm like, hey, what's this conference? And the lady looks at me and is just like, this is an annual meetup of parents with deceased children. And I'm like that as a premise, like the joke's very strong. But like that, if you have the grace to understand that this is a real thing that happened to me, and that you can put yourself in that situation when someone tells you, a stranger, that their kids are dead, and you're in the elevator, like, and the door is closing, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this information? Like, I froze up, but in the moment, I definitely froze. But the joke is still the joke, and I would love grace from an audience to be like, this is a guy just trying to be right and trying to do the right thing. And he does the wrong thing sometimes, but therein lies the comedy. Like in reality, I do one thing, but on stage, I'm a comedian, so I'm going to do the thing that is wrong to do. That doesn't necessarily mean I did the wrong thing in person.
I think so. When I ask,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when I ask, like, yo, does it kill you? I think like folks that.
You got a napkin?
Well, if we got a napkin.
Yeah, that worked. Oh, it's all good. A little Patrick Mahomes action. Go ahead.
I think when folks stand, like not stand for something, because I think that I don't want to put that like pressure on like all comedians, right? But I feel like when comedians have jokes that are referencing like real life situations and there is an underlying message or underlying nugget of truth, there's more of a scrutiny on the comedian because it becomes almost political. Yeah,
I know what you're saying, like, but I don't think I think I want too much from an audience sometimes, in the sense I'm like, give me my grace, trust me when I'm saying some things, and allow me to fuck around when I'm fucking around. That might be demanding too much from an audience. But again, that's the double-edged sword of doing comedy sometimes. It's just like I put comedy first all the time. I try not to have a message because I think we kill our heroes in this country. And if I wanted to be a political leader, I would have done politics. I'm on stage to fuck around and make you laugh, hopefully. You brought up, obviously, like you were the first South Asian writer. And last.
And last.
I was just kidding.
No?
No. I don't know if they've had any more, but I was definitely. I think I was the first. Yeah.
You were the first.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
the first. I think that's a Googleable fact,
Uh-huh.
right? Do you think being in that writing room, in that writing room, I believe, got an Emmy as well?
Nominated for an Emmy.
Nominated for an Emmy, right?
But that's like, who has it? Someone has a joke about it, I forget who it was, but that's like Juwan Howard winning a chip because he was sitting on the bench with Miami Heat. You know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like. You know, like I didn't do much lifting there, if anything.
But,
and they perennially get nominated for Emmys. You know, it's like who else are you going to nominate? SNL's SNL. It's like the best show of all time. So
you still feel that way about SNL today?
yeah, I mean, look, people who talk about SNL didn't work there.
Mm-hmm.
People who did work there are allowed to talk whatever they want about it. But what you need to understand, and Che put this best, is they do a brand new show, 90 minutes every week. And most of the show happens from like Thursday to Saturday night, in the sense like they pick all the sketches Wednesday, and then they get to work building the sets, props, rehearsal, blocking, directing, finding all that happens in 3 days. Give a motherfucker a break if it's not a 100% hit rate. Like, you go make that show. You can't. You cannot do that. It's a live show.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. It's like if you're batting 300 in baseball, you're in the Hall of Fame, right? That's SNL bats 300. You know, sure, they have some duds. Who doesn't fuck up sometimes? Like sometimes stuff hits and you think it's going to hit and doesn't hit. It's just like, that's the name of the business. But you have 50 years of at-bats. Who's doing that? Who 50 years? It's insane. And so just on longevity and prolificness alone, like it's an insane show. Are there better TV shows like in the moment? Sure. Like I love Tim Robinson's sketch show. I think it's the funniest thing ever written. Can he do that for 50 years? Maybe. I don't know. Hopefully I love Tim. Like he's amazing. Yeah. But like it's been on the air for 50 years. It is culture. Like you hate it, you're still talking about it. You know what I mean? So
no, I think that's like a really good point, right? Because obviously when people talk about like best sketch shows of all time, they bring up Chappelle's, but we only saw Chappelle's for what, 2 seasons, right? Like it's not 50 years of people having.
Yeah, you forget Chappelle had some duds too. Like there was some shit that didn't work all the time, but I mean, I'm sure Dave could have kept it up for 50 years, but it is just the nature of the business. You take a million swings and they're not going to hit every single one, and sometimes you got to look at in a season they do what, 30 episodes. Mm-hmm. Oh, what, like 8? I don't know what it is. I forget. But okay, like a third of them didn't hit. A third of the episodes, and they still had 16 great episodes. And within those 16 great episodes, like 50% of the sketches hit, 40% of the sketches hit. That's an insane number. You know, it's like a lot of work. And remember, it's a lot of work to do that show. Like you think it's easy, but they deserve every award and accolade they've ever gotten. They deserve all the money. It's an insane program. That being said, you know, it's got its flaws, and there's definitely room for improvement in a lot of areas in terms of some of the sketches and stuff. But hey, man, that's just the game.
Did it impact and influence your comedy or your approach to comedy working in that room?
I realized what I was good at and what I was not good at. I am not good at writing like those kind of single one-off jokes that are like about a news story at all. But no, I don't think it really changed my approach to. I mean, you have to be in stand-up. You have to be like a very singular voice, and at Weekend Update, your voice kind of fades because you're writing for Che and Jost. So if anything, it just made me like want to strengthen my own voice. But that's really it. Not like content-wise. No, it didn't really change anything.
Like when you're writing, does it feel different? Obviously, I assume the answer is yes, but does it feel different writing for Che and Jost, right, rather than writing jokes for yourself? And does your approach to that kind of differ?
Well, I mean, again, it was like 7 years ago when I wrote for the show, but you know, I was tasked with writing for the whole crew is tasked with writing with Che and Jost. But the challenge for me was like, I was at the time still my own stand-up. And so it was hard to be like, hear say these jokes that I wrote that I would do in your voice. It's like a very hard thing to do, especially when Che and Jost are very strong stand-ups in their own right, and Che is probably one of the best stand-ups on the planet. Like, it's a difficult needle to thread, and I threaded it well a few times, but overall, like it was a challenge for sure.
Being able to like look back at like your career, you think that like obviously like leaving SNL was a pivotal.
Well, I was not my choice to leave. I was fired from the show. That's what happens. You like, they just tell you, hey, you're not coming back. And you're like, all right, well, that was a fun run. Thank you very much. And at the moment, it felt like the end of the world. But luckily, I did Seth Meyers like a week after Late Night with Seth Meyers. They had me do stand-up on that show. And then a few days after that, I was like, literally, I had a few road dates lined up to do stand-up on my own. And I was like, and so I didn't really have much time to process what was going on. And so in hindsight, just a bump in the road or a speed bump or, you know, a step up or whatever, lateral, I don't know what you want to call it. But at the moment, I was like, fuck, what happens now? But, you know, the hindsight is 2020 and it wasn't that big of a deal. I'm still doing fine, you know.
Fine, crushing.
I'm doing work, man. I'm working.
Crushing, bro.
Just working.
I think like a big anybody I talk to in terms of like my age group, right, that is a fan of yours, right? Something that always comes up in conversation for us is that you had what I describe as like a true like slashy origin story, right? Like
Slashy?
You worked at the liquor store.
No, I never worked at the liquor store. I hope that's not a I hope that's not a thing that's out there. I've never worked at a liquor store. My parents were like, "You're not working in this neighborhood. You're gonna get shot."
You worked at did finance at Bloomberg.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Was doing comedy at the same time, right? And then you made the jump, right? When I say slashy, right, it's like the idea of like all the 20-somethings that are in their corporate era, right, but are trying to do something like creative, right, or trying to make it in comedy, make it in podcasting, make it in media, whatever it is, right? And you have successfully done it at
I'll say that, yeah, that's agreeable.
At a high clip, right? What do you think kind of made you different and made you successful in that, right? Because there's so many people that try to do that are never able to escape that, hey, like I enjoy comedy, but I can't leave my corporate job. Like, what helped you escape?
I've been mostly lucky.
I don't want to say I don't want to simplify it to luck.
I've been very lucky. I've been in the right place at the right time most of my life, a lot of my life. Wrong place at the wrong time a lot of times too, but right place at the right time or right place at the wrong time a lot of the times. And at every moment in my career when I thought things were going poorly or things were done or whatever it was, stars aligned to tell me that they weren't and that things were going to be fine. And I was fortunate enough to recognize that that's what was happening, and or ignorant enough to not see signs that I should stop whatever I was doing, or arrogant enough rather to not see the signs. Like in 2008, I graduated. I had like a 3.4 at NYU, and in 2008, it was a bad year to be a B student. All my A student friends were going on to investment banks and all that, and I had no idea. I did finance because it was something to do, and I was pre-med because I wanted to be a doctor. But I dropped that my junior year, so now I was stuck with this thing that I had just chosen it because it was a good thing to have, but I always thought I was going to be a doctor, so now finance is going to be the backup plan. But you can't rely on the backup plan when like you haven't pursued the first plan in the first place. And so when I graduated, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I never fully developed the backup plan. Even though I had a lot of time to develop the backup plan, I kind of just figured things would work out. And they didn't. And so in 2008, I was interning. I was like a temp job at Bloomberg, started comedy in 2009. And I had the arrogance of thinking like it would be easy. And I was very fortunate to have a bunch of cousins who were supportive early on and came to shows, and like, because you had to do like bringers to like get stage time. And fortunate enough that, you know, I had friends that helped me land day jobs that helped me pay bills. Once I got a job in New York that was like enough to cover rent and food, I was like, and only work 9 to 5. That's because like I was, again, lucky enough to be like, I want to do comedy. And I was, in hindsight, lucky enough to not have a job that made me, that demanded a lot of my time. My first paid job was at this hedge fund. I was a research assistant, and I didn't tell them I was doing comedy. And so, and everyone on the research assistant path there was supposed to like work their way up to become an analyst, or you know, and eventually PM and all that. But like, you know, years in, but from research assistant to analyst, that was like the path. And had I not had already started comedy, had I not already been like a year and a half into comedy, and I would have seen that I was on this path to become an analyst and like become a, you know, trillionaire and make, you know, gobs of money and all that kind of stuff. At that point, I may have not pursued comedy any further, but because I was so defiant in thinking I could become a comedian and do comedy to the level where like it would only be the only thing I did, and my peers were having a lot of success just doing comedy, I thought, okay, it's just a matter of time for me that this is going to happen for me, that I can not have to work in finance or anything like that. And then every step of the way, like it was like that, where like I just wanted to do comedy. And so anything I did was in pursuit of that. Any job I took, like I got after the hedge fund, because I would leave at like 5 o'clock. A hedge fund is not a place you leave at 5 p.m. if you want to become an analyst. You know, you work until the PM's gone.
You knew what your North Star was.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna go do stand. I remember, I will never forget when I knew I was gonna get fired from the hedge fund. It was like it was a company holiday party, or a company like quarterly outing or something, and they had bought this restaurant out, and the party's going, and like everyone's hanging out, and it's like I got to catch a 6 o'clock train on a Monday, 7 o'clock train on. It was in Irvington, New York, which is for a bit further north on what's it called, Metro North. It was like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and I'd started a show every Monday night that we started at 8:30, and it was my show with Che and Denny, and I had to be there before when it started so I can set up and like make sure the show runs smoothly. And I have to go. I remember leaving that dinner and the PM, Ron, looking at me like disgust, right? Just like, all right, we'll see you later. And I knew that within a few weeks I would be let go. And I was. But every step of the way, it was just like, I'm gonna do comedy despite any temptation that comes to do something else. Next job I had was I was a researcher. I was 26 years old, 27, working for a bunch of 22-year-olds, like investment banking analysts. I was their assistant. So like they're all those like 22-year-olds making more money than me. Being like, hey, can you put my expenses on this piece of paper and submit it to the accountant? I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't give a shit. But at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I was like, I'm out. I gotta go do comedy. The next job I got laid off from that job because the firm took a turn, but they've since bounced back. But after that, I joined a family office, becoming an assistant. Told them I was doing comedy. Only wanted to do comedy. Only want to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6.
I think that's where the insanity kicks in, because anybody else in your spot, because you're talking about like real. It's not like you're working at hedge funds. It's like what people like aspire to do, right? But it's like you don't.
But people aspire to do the hedge fund thing. They want to do the investment banking thing. Mm-hmm. I could see that for myself, but I didn't want to be to be a hedge fund analyst, to be an investment banking analyst, to be a private equity associate. That is your entire life. You have to be the best at that thing. You got to dedicate yourself to that thing. To be the best at comedy, you got to dedicate yourself to comedy. But if you understand that anything you're pursuing outside of the thing that makes your bread and butter is going to be a long game, then you understand that you have to put a lot of time in. It's just going to take time until you can finally make the leap. And anyone that asks me any advice from a creative perspective, I always say, don't quit your day job, because there's nothing more liberating from a creative perspective than to having money. Like, there's nothing more freeing than not having to worry about how you're going to eat or how you're going to pay your rent or how you're going to hang out or anything like that. Like, it's so liberating. Like, you don't have to think about, fuck, I gotta go make this check. Like, I can't, I'm too stressed to write a joke or whatever it is. You don't have to think about it. And so I was very fortunate in that, like, every job that I got understood that, and that's what I wanted to pursue. And I was lucky enough to have the mindset like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm doing this. And lucky enough that my peers were seeing, outside, like, seeing crazy success in the field that I was doing. So I was like, I'm probably on the right path. It's going to take me a little longer because I'm not fully doing it.
Yeah. Did you have like an ambition for comedy? I know, like, obviously, like, you wanted to be a comedian, right? But obviously we're talking about like, you have a Netflix special coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, was there like an ambition to your being a comedian? Because I don't know if this is true, right? But I read it online. Like, you were discovered by Chris Rock during a set, and the story kind of went online, right? Correct me, right? Is that you said, "Hey, I'm going to perform"?
Well, yeah. So again, like, to answer the second question first, like, and it kind of dovetails with the earlier conversation. I was in the right place at the right time when that happened. Myself, Che, and Denny, we had built up the show called Broken Comedy. 6 years in, it was like one of the best shows in New York. Free show every Monday night. It was my show, it was Che's show, it was Denny's show. Like, we could do whatever we wanted. And we got wind Chris was coming to see someone else. And I was like, there's no way I'm not performing in front of Chris. Like, that's my G. Like, I love Chris Rock. I'm performing in front of Chris. And it has to be before the guy he's coming to see goes up, because otherwise Chris will leave. So I just went up second on that show, and I did great. And I discovered is like a I don't know if that's the right word, but I guess it's the best word for the sake of conversation. It's like, he told me I was funny at a time when my day job was ending. Like, the family office I was at was shutting down in 5-6 months. And I'd just been rejected from this big festival for like the third time. And it was like fucking with my ego. At that low point, Chris comes in. He's like, "You're really funny." I'm like, "You're Chris Rock." Like Chris Rock just told me I was funny. Like, and that's kind of like what I was saying earlier. Like, every time I'm thinking like things are going poorly, stars align to tell me that you're on the right path, kind of thing. And again, like, I was just fortunate enough to know that what was happening, and lucky enough to have that happen to me at times when I needed it to happen.
I think that's why I don't want you to. I get what you're saying. I don't want you to ever like look at it as like just like luck, right? Because,
I mean,
like, Nipsey has like a great line where it's like opportunity meets like preparation, right? Like, unless you're putting your reps in, when you could have performed in front of Chris Rock and been horrible.
I'm not. I don't want to seem fake humble here. Like, I was ready for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm doing comedy every night, almost every night, for 6 years at that point, which is not a lot, but it's a lot. And like 2 or 3 shows a night kind of thing. Like, I was in the gym. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I took advantage of that moment. There's been a billion opportunities that I fucked up, a billion opportunities where my preparation wasn't enough, or my preparation was enough. It just wasn't the right time or the right place, so I wasn't the right person. And other times where I was like, that I blew that because of my own arrogance. But again, like, that's a given that I'm going to be ready. Like, I'm good at what I do, and I work hard at it. And so when you play with skills, good luck will happen. That's the Jay-Z line. But like, that is what had happened. I was playing with skills. It wasn't just some like not ready for the moment guy. I was ready for the moment. I knew what I was doing. I did my A material. I did material that I really believed in. And the joke that I believed in the most was one I wrote in the bathroom right before I went up. That just clicked in my head. It was the only joke that crowd didn't laugh at, and it was the first joke that I heard Chris laugh at. Everyone was quiet. Chris laughed. Fuck all you. I'm good. I know what I'm doing. But again, that's a given. Like, I'm not trying to be fake humble here. Like, I'm good at what I do, and I deserve all the stuff that I've gotten. But luck played a tremendous part of it in moments when, like, again, like, I didn't think I was on the right path or whatever, you know?
I think like it's such like a distinct point in any creator journey, right? Because we all start off like with a little bit of like ego, right? Because that's what gets everybody to even like start. Like, yo, what makes you think you could do comedy, or what makes somebody think that they could do podcasting, right? It starts off from a place of ego, and then you do it enough and realize like, oh, wait, this is not going to be as easy, and I'm not as so talented than everybody else.
Yeah.
But then like that early indicator from somebody to truly validate and revalidate at points where, hey, like the money may not be there, or like you may not be where you want in that career is such a pivotal point. Because I look at like a lot of times like for this, right? Like I can't really point to certain things and be like, oh, like this is an indicator of success. But I can always point to, yo, I got Nimesh Patel on my podcast a week before a special, right?
You're a great interviewer if that's what you're
like. No,
if you're looking for.
No. You don't have, like, you being here is an indicator. Like, you don't got to. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to do this. I look at a lot of like guests that I have that I truly admire from.
Yeah, so Purna on. Shout out to Purna. From Delhi Boys last week, right? Yeah, she's great.
Like, I think like for me, like those are like just presence, opportunity to even like do my craft with said person is like the indicator, and the only thing that keeps me like, I guess, like fed to keep going, because it's not like the money that's keeping me fed, right? It's just the indicator for some people like you respect in the craft, right? So getting that validation from Chris Rock in that moment is like, yo, like I'm good and I can keep going.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, it didn't feel early at the time and that never does. It was a key moment for sure. And that'll be on my tombstone. Chris Rock said he was funny. Like, that's it, you know?
So obviously now you have like the Netflix special coming up, right? What is, I guess, like, A, how does that happen? And B, like, what does that kind of like mean for your career? Because I think like in terms of like comedy, like having a Netflix special or a Hulu special is now like in 2025, like a stamping moment almost.
We'll see. I mean, you know, I've done a lot, fortunately, without a big platform like that. You know, thank you, China, the special, but also thank you, China, for TikTok and allowing me to, for having a platform that could distribute my stand-up stuff that I believed in, you know, without having to go to a platform or streamer. I've done a lot without like this, I don't say industry stamp, but an industry widening, a wide platform. But to have Netflix say like, okay, we're going to put you on our platform, we'll take a bet on you. That's really what it is. It's a like almost a venture capital bet on someone who they believe in from artistic standpoint, and moreover from a business perspective, like, oh, we think you'll be able to bring subscribers to the platform or help us maintain our subscriber flow. Like, that's really, you know, my first job as an intern was an internship with a friend of mine who was portfolio manager at the time, who was like, you're going to cover Netflix. This is 2010, when Netflix was just shifting to video on demand, moving away from the DVD business. And their whole crux of their model is making sure they maintain and grow subscribers, right? Like, that's obvious. So at the end of the day, fast forward 15 years, that remains the same. What can they bring onto the platform? Who can they bring onto the platform that will help them maintain their subscriber growth or help them maintain the retention and prevent churn? And that's the bet they've taken. Hopefully, I'm optimistic that people who like comedy, people who see themselves in me or see themselves in some way or form or another in the special, like it, spread the word, so that I don't have to use social media as much anymore to put myself out there. Like, it is a tax on my mental and also a tax on the business itself because it costs a lot of money to maintain social media accounts at the level that I'm doing it. In terms of like getting clips and editing and all that kind of stuff costs a lot of money. And more than that, it's like a mental tax of like, I got to market myself again. Like, hopefully it's just like people see the special, they go look for tickets, they like what they see when they see me live, they come back again. And I build that, I kind of grow that fan base in that sense. And then I have to think I can shift away from the addictive platforms that are TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and all that.
I think it will, right? Because I don't think, not that like Netflix doesn't make bad bets, right? But I feel like when they, especially in the comedy space, when they're approaching you, it's because of the reason that you said at the top of it, right? Is that you've already shown without a platform, I'm able to drive traffic and drive attention, right? Without a Netflix and without me being at the headline of like the Netflix thing, right?
Right.
Like I'm doing this organically.
Yeah, I mean, look, hopefully, but it's got to also then hit Netflix's numbers. Like my numbers to like maintain my life and all that are different than Netflix's numbers required to maintain my presence on the platform. The licensing deal that I've signed is like they own it for 2 years, and then if they don't like it, you get it back and you can do whatever you want with it. Or if they like it enough or it doesn't well enough for them, they renew the license. That's how a lot of these deals work. So hopefully it does well enough in the first, it's like the first 10 days matters the most and the first month matters the most. Like within that first month we get 1 million views on the special, like I'm good money.
That's like on like Netflix's side that you're saying that it matters like the most.
Yeah. I'm not 1 million is like just a number I pulled out of my head, but out of the air. But like just like to have as many people watch in that first month, and share it and like it and hit like the reminder button is very important right now. As you're watching this podcast, like to hit reminder, like it's a early indicator, early metric for Netflix to be like, okay, this might be something. And
what does that do on like the back end though, right? Because like obviously we're talking about like full watch numbers, right? Which is like I'm sure there's like a review process on Netflix's side and your side, like a month in or 6 months in, right? But what does that like early traffic kind of do for like
I don't know what it does for me. I don't know what it means on Netflix's back end. I think I just have heard anecdotally that it's important to have the more engaged that person is, the more indicative is of their lifetime value to Netflix. So if someone hits remind me, and then once they're reminded, they watch the special, not only do they watch it the whole way through. And then at the end of the whole way through, they hit, this was for me, didn't like it or loved it. Like their engagement there the whole way through, each step of the way is a measure of their lifetime value as a customer to Netflix. And then if they go from what you've watched, what you just watched this, would you like this? And then they hit that next thing. And then in the dream world, the customer's just on that platform forever, right? Like they just keep hitting the next thing that they want to see. Like each step of the way is a measurement of their lifetime value to the platform. So that first step, the remind me, is the first indicator that this is a valuable consumer, a valuable person on the platform, because they're going to come back to the platform to the point where they set a reminder for themselves to come back. And so any way you can indicate to Netflix that you are a high lifetime value subscriber is a net positive. So yeah, hit remind me and then watch it, and then hit I love this, and then watch something else.
Is this obviously like this is a big deal like career wise, right? It is like the next like step, because you
hopefully, I mean, look,
like you've had a lot of success like outside, right? But it is like like we said, like in 2025, it is like the next like thing. Did you feel any of that pressure like putting the special together?
No, because you can't. I definitely want it to be a step function in my career, you know, like to be able, I sell out places now, but it's a lot of work to remind people I'm coming, and that's just the fractured nature of marketing at the moment. In my dream world, I'll be able to sell places out without having to constantly tell people I'm coming to those places.
Mhm.
That would mean the special achieved everything I've wanted. In a moonshot world, it's like I have the Ali Wong effect or the Shane Gillis effect. People who put the stuff out there, and Shane's a different example because Shane is on another planet. But once Ali went from, like, from what I understand, doing clubs, like a few clubs, like not fully sold out, but just like working as a comedian, to like selling out theaters at the drop of a hat, almost overnight. Granted, her special came out at a different time, and it was an incredible special. She's an incredible comic, and she was one of these people that had like phronesis happen. She was like the right person at the right time, saying the right things for the right people, and she went from like here to like here. Right now I'm like here. If I could go here, which is just like another step, I'm good. In the moonshot world, it becomes like the Ali Wong effect, where I go from here to like over there. But that's like winning the lotto,
I don't know if it's winning the lotto. I really think, like, again, I'm gonna put an early like bet out, and we can look back at this in like 6 months to a year. I think it's a moonshot.
Okay. Well, thank you for your vote of confidence.
I think that when I think about like name recognition, right? Because I'm surprised to hear you even say that you have to like actively market, right? Because again, I told people I was doing this pod, right? Like of name recognition, I can only really think of like 2 to 3 in our specific culture names that really come up.
Yeah, Aziz and Hassan.
Aziz, Hassan, and you. And
that's a good stable mates for sure.
It's good, right?
Yeah.
And when Hassan put out his first special on Netflix, right? It was that moonshot.
Yeah.
Right? And, obviously, like the content of what it was and everything, right? But it's the thing that got him to go, right? Aziz was obviously a little bit before that, right? I do, and because I'm surprised that you even have to currently market, because I feel like anytime your name pops up in everybody who's South Asian inside those cities is probably showing up, right? Hopefully. I think it's the mainstream, I guess.
No, I
right?
I have a back of the envelope test when I'm walking down the street. If I see a Indian guy that's from anywhere from like age 20 to 40, if they don't give me the sideways like little,
was that Nimesh?
Yeah, then I'm not where I need to be. You know what I mean? That still happens in New York, where sometimes I'll walk past an Indian guy and I know that they don't know that I'm a comedian, or where I was like, if I know that if Hassan walked past or Aziz walked past, they'd be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And those are my guys, and I'm incredibly proud of their success. It's just, I know that they're in a spot where like they could just be like, I'm coming to the city. Granted, they still have to work a lot to market themselves too, but they're marketing a very different thing.
Yes.
To me, like, if I can sell out club weekends without having to think about it, that to me, and then I've achieved like so much. Because right now, like, to sell out a club weekend is still like, I gotta let you know for quite a while that I'm coming to this club. There are some of my peers and friends who could just be like, I'm coming to this club in 2 months, sold out. Like within a week, like that's an insane spot to get to. And again, like, no, from this side of things, I can tell you that would feel like winning the lottery, to like consistently sell out any club without having to really think about it, and do just 30 club weekends in a year, not have to think about it selling out. Just be like, I'm coming, let's go. And not have to worry about, did they sell out? Like, how many tickets are left? Like, do I have to give away any tickets? That would be such a dream come true.
Why is it a dream? Is it the business element of like, hey, I don't have to worry about it? Is it the business element, or is it something like, hey, I can just do this comedy thing forever and not really I can just focus on being a comedian forever?
It's one and the same. It's like the elements of marketing, the elements of marketing take away a lot from the work of stand-up. Because like right now, like 2 of my days are spent thinking about what clips and what videos and what stories and all that kind of shit are going to go out over the next X amount of time. That's 40% of my week,
Mm-hmm.
of my work week is consumed by not thing that, makes my beer taste better. Like that's a Jeff Bezos quote. It's like only focus on what makes your beer taste better. Outsource the rest of that shit. And in my world, outsourcing the rest of that shit means not having to do it at all. It's outsourcing it to Netflix, basically. Like, hey, I'm coming to your town. You see me on Netflix. I'm coming to your town. Everyone's like, oh, we got to go see this guy. Like that provides a level of security. It also provides a level of just like, I'm good. I can just walk in, do my shit, and walk out. And that is like a very liberating thing. You know what I mean? I don't have to think about it at all. Fantastic. I do it because I have to do it, but I would love to only focus on the stand-up part of it. That would be a dream.
You think like as you obviously like, as you scale up, right? Like Netflix special, whatever it is, right? Because I still see like obviously like whether it's Andrew Schultz, Akash Singh, right? Like still promoting, like they're still in their own promotion cycle. And again, those guys are a little bit more on like the independent like route, right? Because they've
well, Schultz has 2 things on Netflix. So let's not call them fully independent. But sorry, keep going.
No, like because I see them like whether it's on their podcast or they're still doing press and media to push like ticket sales. So it does still feel like that there is a need on that end. Well,
yeah, for sure. But again, like they're marketing different things. If Andrew wanted to do like 10, 20 club weekends a year, and that's all he wanted to do, and that's all he needed to do, he could easily just be like, these are the club weekends I'm doing. And with enough lead, like you also have to understand like the customer isn't necessarily buying like a ticket a year out, but if he did it within enough time frame that the person can make a buying decision, he could easily just be like, hey, I'm coming to these are 10 venues I'm doing, and then post like once or twice, and then that's it. And I'm just making that call based off of how quickly people sell out theaters. Like selling out a theater is a lot of work. A lot of theaters, good sized theaters, like 2,000-3,000 tickets. To sell 2,000 to 3,000 tickets in a city is a lot of work, unless you're someone who could just be like, I'm coming. And there's people I know that could do that. Shane is doing arenas. If he wanted to do like instead just like 4 theaters instead of an arena, or 2 theaters instead of an arena, it would easily just be like, hey, I'm coming to this city. Get tickets, and it could be like 2 weeks out, and he's like, I'm coming to the city, I'm popping up and doing 2 theaters, and just sell it out, no problem. I think just basing off how quickly he sells out arenas. So in my dream moonshot world, I'm selling out theaters at the drop of a hat. What I'm optimistic and hopeful for is that I'm selling out clubs at the drop of a hat, and anything that happens after on top of that is kind of gravy. Right now I can sell out. Right now I've sold out a lot of theaters, but again, it's taken a lot of work. It's taken like lots of social media stuff, shooting a lot of videos that I don't want to shoot. Not from like
I can tell you just don't enjoy that part of it.
It's just not fun. It's like it's not what I got into comedy for. Granted, I didn't know what I got into. I didn't know what comedy was going to be outside of the stand-up stuff of it, but it definitely takes away from the fun of it all. It feels like it kills the art of it all.
That's like the work part. Like that is like the business. That is like, hey, I'm Nimesh Patel, like the entity, and not like I'm Nimesh Patel, like the comedian.
Right. And I'm not complaining. I hope I'm not sounding like whiny. I'm just saying like these are the facets of the business that take away from the art of it all. And I'm optimistic that I can get back just purely to the art of it all. And that's what I hope that this special does for me, or it's just like, oh yeah, he's coming, we got to go see him. I'm not going to be doing another tour for a very long time after this one. So hopefully people come see me after, once the special comes out, we'll also be announcing a tour. Hopefully we'll all be coming to all the major cities, doing clubs and all that kind of stuff. But that tour will be probably one of my last one for a while.
No, that's amazing. Yeah. Nimesh, I want to be respectful of your time, but
thank you very much.
We end every episode with a segment called Call Your Shot. It's like my idea of
call your shot.
My idea of really just like manifesting, whatever you want to call it. The idea being you say something in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I'm able to clip it up, and then when you go out and actually do the thing, whether it's personal or business, I'm able to clip it up, send it to you, do the whole socials thing. But Nimesh Patel, call your shot.
I'm gonna call my shot. That in the next 6 months to a year, I'll be selling out clubs very comfortably, and in a year or two from now, I'll have my own show, a narrative series on one of the platforms. I'm calling that shot right now.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Yo, Nimesh, first of all, thank you absolutely for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate everything that you've been doing. Obviously, like I don't gotta say over index on like what it means for like South Asian culture to see you guys like have Netflix specials and things like that, right?
I hope it means something.
It means so much. Like I can't really like again, completely different art form, right? But seeing you, seeing Hassan, seeing Aziz, like those people have. They're like, it was crazy seeing, obviously you sent me the Netflix thing yesterday, right? Just seeing your name like on the top of like the Netflix feed, I was like, oh, like this is like insane to me, because I'm like, it gives you something to actually like imagine, and you don't have to just like imagine it, right? You can see it. Like it's like, oh, like this is what it would look like to see a name similar to mine, a person that look like me on a screen like that, right?
Thank you, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. I don't take enough time to. My sister says the same thing, but I don't. It does. It's like. Again, it's just arrogance. I'm like, yeah, of course it was gonna happen, you know.
Yeah.
But
no, for you, absolutely, because you're in it, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully, you can look back at it and see the gravity of like what it is that you've like done and created, right? Because obviously, right now you're in, I gotta push this out mode, right? But hopefully, you can look back in 6 months into a year and like look back at the same way that you looked at the Chris Rock situation, look back at this, and say like, yo, like what an insane moment to have. But appreciate you doing this, and appreciate y'all listening. Peace.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Bro.